He was only 37 years old when he collapsed in the dark, under a dull Los Angeles street lamp. An Oscar-nominated actor, a former teen idol, a man who had survived the brutal rise and fall of Hollywood fame, only to die a few feet from his own front door. It was the night of February 12th, 1976. Sal Mineo had just finished rehearsal for a play called P.S. Your Cat is Dead, a low-budget stage production that, for the first time in years, was giving him real hope. The reviews were good. He was paying his bills again. He was finally being talked about as an actor, not as a relic from the 1950s. Around 10 p.m., he parked his car in West Hollywood and walked toward the small apartment building where he lived. It was a quiet residential street, the kind of place where struggling actors came home late, carrying scripts and costumes instead of trophies. Somewhere between the sidewalk and the staircase, someone stepped out from the shadows. There was no warning, no argument, just a sudden movement, a flash of metal, and a single devastating stab to the heart. Neighbors heard him cry out for help. By the time they reached him, Sal Mineo was lying face down on the pavement, bleeding through his shirt, gasping for air he would never catch again. His wallet was still in his pocket. His cash was untouched. Detectives would later note that nothing seemed to have been taken from his body, and yet everything had been taken from his life. Police called it a senseless killing. Prosecutors said it was just another street crime in a dangerous city. A pizza delivery man was eventually convicted, but the rumors never stopped. Was it really a random attack? Or was there something darker behind the murder of a bisexual actor in 1970s Hollywood, a man whose career, secrets, and enemies stretched from studio backlots to underground clubs? This is not just the story of a murder in an alley. It is the story of how Hollywood can turn a young, beautiful prodigy into a disposable myth, and how decades later, we are still trying to understand what really happened to Sal Mineo on the night he died. Before he became a headline, before the tabloids twisted his name into a tragedy, Sal Mineo was a boy from the Bronx who wanted nothing more than to be seen, not as a product, not as a commodity, but as an artist. Born in 1939 to Italian immigrant parents, Salvatore Mineo grew up in a small, struggling household where dreams were luxuries and work was survival. But even as a child, he had a presence that adults couldn't ignore. Dance teachers said he moved with an energy far beyond his age. Acting coaches said he had something rare, the ability to feel deeply and project that feeling without fear. By age 12, Sal was already performing on Broadway. By 15, Hollywood was calling, and by 16, he had achieved what most actors chase for a lifetime. He became immortal. His breakout role came in Rebel Without a Cause, 1955, where he played Plato, the lonely, sensitive teenager who adored James Dean's character. It was a performance so raw, so vulnerable, so painfully real that audiences instantly recognized the truth beneath it. Sal wasn't just acting heartbreak, he understood it. Hollywood branded him the Switchblade Kid, America's youngest heartthrob, the new James Dean. He was nominated for an Academy Award at only 17, one of the youngest male nominees in Oscar history. Teen magazines put him on covers. Fans waited outside studios. Directors said he could be the next Marlon Brando. But beneath the fame, there was something else, an internal life that Hollywood never allowed him to express. A secret identity, a quiet truth he carried alone. In an era where being openly LGBTQ could end a career overnight, Sal Mineo walked a path built on contradictions. He wanted love, but lived in fear. He wanted freedom, but carried the weight of hiding. He wanted to evolve as an artist, but studios only wanted the boy he once was. And slowly, painfully, the industry that had made him a star began to turn away from him. He was too sensitive, too emotional, too honest for the Hollywood machine. But even as the studios stopped calling, even as fame slipped away, Sal Mineo never stopped believing that one day he would reclaim everything that had been taken from him. He was ready for a comeback, but fate was ready for something else. For a brief, blazing moment, Sal Mineo was unstoppable. Hollywood loved him, America adored him, and critics believed he was the most gifted young actor of his generation. After Rebel Without a Cause, Sal became the face of a new kind of masculinity on screen. Fragile, wounded, yearning. He represented the emotional depth that 1950s America wasn't ready to talk about, and yet couldn't look away from. His second Oscar nomination came with Exodus, 1960, where he delivered a performance that proved he wasn't just a teen idol, he was a serious actor. In interviews, co-stars often recalled how he transformed on set, quiet and gentle one moment, powerful and volcanic the next. Directors loved that he could access emotions that older actors spent decades trying to master. He had everything: a devoted fan base, box office power, cultural influence, critical acclaim. And yet his rise wasn't only professional, it was deeply personal. For the first time, Sal felt he belonged somewhere. On film sets, he wasn't the boy from the Bronx. He wasn't the son of immigrants struggling to survive. He wasn't the teenager hiding his identity in the shadows. He was an artist surrounded by others who understood him. Behind the scenes, he became close friends with legends like James Dean and Natalie Wood. Photographs from the era show a young man full of life, laughing, dancing at parties, leaning against studio walls with a confidence that made him glow. Producers called him the next great Hollywood icon. Agents said his career was limitless. Teen magazines ran articles predicting he would become the biggest star of the 1960s. It seemed impossible that anything could stop him. But Hollywood fame is a fragile currency, one that collapses the moment the industry finds a new favorite. As Sal grew older, the golden boy image that had made him famous became the very thing that began to trap him. He wanted adult roles. Hollywood wanted the teenage rebel. He wanted depth. Hollywood wanted marketability. He wanted truth. Hollywood wanted illusion. And slowly, a quiet tension began to grow, one that would eventually turn into a devastating fall. Hollywood has a cruel way of discarding the very stars it once worshipped. And for Sal Mineo, the fall wasn't sudden. It was slow, suffocating, and humiliating. The very thing that made him famous, his fragile beauty, his emotional vulnerability, his boyish intensity, became a curse the moment he grew older. The studios no longer knew what to do with him. Casting directors looked past him. Producers avoided him. He wasn't the new James Dean anymore. He wasn't the teen idol America screamed for. He was something Hollywood had no place for, an actor who had outgrown his own myth. And then came the rumors, the whispers, the labels. Sal was quietly marked as difficult, then unpredictable, then box office poison. This wasn't true, but in Hollywood, perception becomes reality faster than facts. Behind closed doors, the industry also knew another truth. Sal Mineo was bisexual, in an era when such a revelation could end a career overnight. He lived in fear that the secret would be weaponized, that one wrong headline could destroy everything, that one tabloid leak could finish him. So he hid his relationships, hid his loneliness, hid himself. He accepted smaller roles, then worse roles, then no roles at all. By the late 1960s, the offers dried up. He went from Oscar-nominated prodigy to a man Hollywood pretended not to know. Casting agents stopped returning calls. Studios stopped requesting meetings. Some friends drifted away. Others stayed silent. His financial life collapsed next. He took stage work just to survive. He toured rundown theaters, living out of suitcases, performing for crowds who barely remembered who he was. And yet, in the quiet spaces between rehearsals and empty hotel rooms, Sal never stopped believing he could rise again. He studied new acting techniques. He wrote scripts. He fought for roles. He rebuilt himself from the ground up. By the mid-1970s, something miraculous began to happen. Critics were noticing him again. His performances were sharper, deeper, more fearless. He had evolved, not as a teen idol, but as a true actor. He was on the edge of a comeback. His name was returning to Hollywood conversations. He had secured a role he believed would redefine him. For the first time in years, Sal Mineo had hope. But just when his life was finally turning around, Hollywood's dark shadow extended one last time. And this time, it would be fatal. On February 12, 1976, Sal Mineo woke up believing his life was finally changing. For the first time in over a decade, he felt momentum again. His new stage production, P.S. Your Cat is Dead, was receiving strong early reviews. Producers whispered that Sal's performance was electric, dangerous, alive. Some even predicted that if the play moved to a major Los Angeles or New York venue, Sal might land the kind of dramatic comeback Hollywood loves to romanticize. He spent that day rehearsing lines, refining stage movements, and discussing the show's future with castmates. Witnesses recall him being focused, energized, hopeful, and unusually cheerful. It was the kind of lightness that only comes after surviving years of darkness. But that night, the light would go out forever. Around 9:45 p.m., Sal left the theater. He got into his small white car, a far cry from the luxury vehicles he once drove during his Hollywood peak, and headed back to his apartment on Holloway Drive. The street was quiet, dim, and almost eerily still. West Hollywood in the 1970s was a place where dreams and danger often lived side by side. Artists, hustlers, runaways, night drifters. Everyone knew everyone, and no one knew anyone. When Sal parked the car, he carried with him just three things: a stack of scripts, a gym bag, and hope for tomorrow. He didn't know he was being watched. Neighbors heard the sequence before they saw it. A car door closing, footsteps on pavement, a sudden, sharp cry, then silence. A dead, terrifying silence. When witnesses ran outside, they found Sal Mineo collapsed on the ground, only a few feet from his apartment building. He was clutching his chest. Blood spread beneath him in a dark pool, staining the concrete. He tried to speak, but only managed a faint, broken whisper before he lost consciousness. He had been stabbed once. Just once. Straight to the heart. There were no signs of robbery, no wallet missing, no struggle that suggested theft. Everything about the crime felt personal, yet oddly efficient. Investigators initially described the attack as a random street mugging gone wrong. It was a convenient explanation. Simple, neat, comfortable, too comfortable. Because the deeper detectives looked, the stranger things became. The supposed killer, a pizza delivery man with a criminal past, was arrested years later. But the motive never aligned with the brutality of the crime. The attack didn't resemble a chaotic mugging. It resembled a targeted hit. One blow. Precise. Lethal. Friends and colleagues openly questioned the official narrative. Some suggested Sal had enemies the public never knew about. Others believed the attack was connected to the underground LGBTQ+ scene of the era, a world hidden from mainstream America, often surveilled, stigmatized, and violently policed. And then there were the lingering Hollywood whispers. Someone wanted the case closed quickly. People in power were involved. Sal knew something he shouldn't have. None of these theories were ever proven, but none were ever disproven either. When paramedics arrived, they tried desperately to revive him, but the blade had pierced too deep, too perfectly. Sal Mineo, once a prodigy, once a worldwide star, once Hollywood's golden boy, was pronounced dead at 10:25 p.m. at 37 years old. A man on the verge of a triumphant return, gone in seconds. The world mourned. Hollywood looked away, and the truth of that night slipped into the shadows, where it still remains. In the days following Sal Mineo's death, Hollywood did what Hollywood often does. It moved on quickly. News outlets covered the murder, but not the man. Headlines focused on the stabbing, not the life. Reporters obsessed over the mystery, not the tragedy. The industry that once crowned him a prodigy now treated him as a footnote, a fallen star, another cautionary tale, another ghost from old Hollywood. But time has a way of resurrecting the forgotten. In the decades after his death, a new generation of critics and filmmakers rediscovered Sal Mineo's work. They found a performer far ahead of his time, emotionally intelligent, nuanced, brave. They noted how a young boy from the Bronx shaped American cinema with two Oscar-nominated roles before he was even old enough to vote. Plato in Rebel, Without a Cause. Dove Landau in Exodus 2, characters defined by loneliness, depth, and emotional realism, characters that still resonate today. Historians began calling him the first modern teen icon, a pioneer of queer-coded performance, a lost genius of American film. And slowly the world began to understand the real tragedy. It wasn't just the night he was murdered that destroyed him. It was everything Hollywood took from him long before. Even after a man was convicted, many close to Sal maintained their doubts. The official explanation felt incomplete, too neat for a crime filled with contradictions. Some believe the real story behind his death remains buried beneath decades of silence, discrimination, and Hollywood politics. His murder is still discussed on forums, true crime podcasts, and investigative documentaries. To this day, audiences debate, was it random? Was it targeted? Or was it something darker that the public never learned? The irony he became after death. Ironically, in death, Sal Mineo achieved what Hollywood denied him in life, a legacy free from typecasting. He became a symbol of lost potential queer representation in old Hollywood, the cruelty of the studio system, the fragility of fame, and the dangers of erasing human beings once the spotlight fades. Every year, new audiences discover him. YouTube channels revisit his story. Film students write papers about his influence. LGBTQ plus historians highlight his courage and coded performances. Fans visit the site where he died, leaving flowers for a man who deserved more. Sal Mineo is no longer just the teen idol who faded. He is a haunting reminder of Hollywood's darkest truth. This town can build legends, and it can destroy them long before the world ever knows what happened. Sal Mineo's story is not just about a murder. It is about a boy who rose too fast, fell too hard, loved too quietly, and died too violently. It is about the thousands of forgotten actors whose brilliance was overshadowed by a system that valued perfection over humanity. Most importantly, it is about remembering the people Hollywood tried to erase, because some stars do not disappear. They burn deeper, echo longer, and haunt stronger in the dark. And Sal Mineo is one of them.